Alright, hi. How you guys doing? Today, what we have is the truth. What we have today is we're going to look again into African and Native American ancestry, what is a Negro, complex origins of race, part 1. The first video that we looked at with this 3-hour video, the first video that we did with this, we covered the first 25 minutes. I think we extended past the 25-minute mark. Today we're going to go between the 25-minute mark and the 1-hour mark, or 60-minute mark. And what's presented in this block of 25 minutes to 1 hour that we're going to cover is going to highlight so many things that I've told you but have not had the actual paperwork to show you. This video is the video that we're getting the root information from. It is amazing. I can't sit and watch it all the way through. There's too much information to just glance over. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So I've made statements that state that you have been brought from Europe, not from Africa. That the African slave trade has nothing to do with taking you from Africa. It has to do with taking you from Europe. As well, I have also stated that our slavery, that people have been taken to Europe. I made that statement because I've seen images of Indians being presented to Europeans, whether it be a European king or the European people. When they draw this image of the portrait of Guadalupe, all the Indians have hair that dangles like mine, and that's what attached me to it. It looks like images of me being dragged away. And that's another reason why I don't sit there and do the image bullshit. You know, I don't spray my hair, I don't braid my hair or anything like that, because when they show those pictures of the slaves, you know, the image that I relate to, there has not. They're not in hairstyles. They're captured. They're not in vanity. You know, these things I relate to, so it sculpts the future of me based on the past. You know, this is the importance of knowing our history. Alright, look, let's get right into it. In the end of the 25-minute mark, it's did you know? At the time of Columbus, the subcontinent of India was referred to as Hindustan, or the Deccan, the European term for indigenous peoples. Now look at that. Are they telling you that the indigenous peoples of Europe were all kind of pushed to the Deccan or to Hindustan? To the subcontinent? Marginalized subcontinent, India? The European term for indigenous peoples all over the world was Indians. This video shows you a mass amount of book covers that tell you about black Indians. Indigenous peoples all over the world are called Indians. From Spanish, translated from Spanish, Indios, meaning God's people. This has nothing to do with Africa this or Africa that, although you find it from the webpage African Native Americans. We are still here. So, Native Americans and Africans are listed as indigenous Indians, meaning God's people. All right. Now listen to this very carefully. Very carefully. In the 1870s, certain white Virginians began to agate for the termination of the Ginniskin Indians reservation in Northampton country. So we know where the Hamptons are, right? Northampton County. And this is in Virginia, not New York. So Northampton County in Virginia. In 1812, it was argued that the place is now inhabited by as many black men as Indians. Now, they are telling us that there are two different nations at this one spot. The Indian women, the indigenous women, have many of them married black men. So, this is interracial marriages in the 1700s of black men and indigenous Indian women. Now they're writing that these men are black. They're not writing as it's a tribe of Indians populating. Now for whatever reason, they're not writing these men are indigenous. So either these men were brought here from a different place, and it is known to the writers, and they are not sharing that point. Now pay attention. Indian women have married, many of them married black men, and a majority, probably, of the inhabitants are blacks and have black blood in them. The real Indians are few. The reserve was allotted in 1813, and by 1832, whites had acquired most of it. Now, in a little bit, we'll find out where these black men are from. They're not African, although the writer wants you to think that. Now we are going to go '28. 2018. All right. No. This is Slave Narrative of Lucinda Van. Lucinda Van tells the unusual story of plantation life from the perspective of a house slave who was born with privileges. The comfort accorded house slaves is in stark contrast to the lives of the field slaves described in other interviews. Interestingly, Miss Van also speaks of some time that her family spent before and during the war in Mexico. There were some Cherokee slaves. Now, these are black men. There were some Cherokee slaves that were taken to Mexico. However, she makes vivid references to Seminole leaders John Horse and Wildcat. A few years of her life were also quite possibly spent among Seminoles during part of that time, although her memory of the death of Joseph Rich Joe Van is clearly a part of Cherokee history. All right. Let's go a little bit further. Mm-mm. 39:27. Now we're going to skip down to 39:27. Oh, it's only going to come in at 28. Oh. All right. The primary purpose of this study is not to write a comprehensive account of Native American and African relations, but rather to establish a sound empirical and conceptual basis for the further study in this area, and more importantly, to demonstrate beyond any doubt that old assumptions must be set aside. This latter is especially true as regards the extent of the Native American African mixture and the significant genetic contributions of Americans to the present day Black or Afro-American populations in Caribbean, Brazil, and the United States and elsewhere. It's important to understand what main areas were brought up when it talks about racial mixing between the quote-unquote African and Native American. They bring up Brazil, the Caribbean, and the United States. They also bring up elsewhere. So, the native to the United States have been mixed with the so-called African from the Caribbean and the so-called African from Brazil. Are you starting to understand our separate melting pot? All right, we're going to continue right here, non-stop, for 10 minutes.
You see, you have been taught by Alex Haley and others that your history started in the slave trade. But they don't even tell you how the slave trade started. They blame you was enslaving yourself. They say your ancestors sold you up. Nice statement. So I asked the guy, what country, what was the name of the king? Oh, don't worry about that, they sold you out. As if I don't know that the slave trade started with the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church by the name of Martin V.
Hey, this is pretty interesting. Now you have another face. You've had me, you've had white people tell you. Now you got your suit and tie, your respectable image. With a tongue that sounds like it's an African speaking English. Telling you. Listen again.
Enslaving yourself. They say your ancestors sold you up. Nice statement. So I asked the guy, what country, what was the name of the king? Oh.
There's no African king that sold us out. There's no Negro king that sold us out. The king that sold us out is the Pope. The Pope's seat. When I call you to meet in Washington, in front of his home, when he's on our soil, you say no. When I say protest dum diversis, this is what enslaved us. This is what gives them power over us. You fucking said no. Listen again.
Oh, don't worry about that, they sold you out. As if I don't know that the slave trade started with the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church by the name of Martin V. And Reverend Bartholomew de las Casas on the island of Hispaniola, now called Haiti and St. Domingo. You see, nobody told you it's time to get sorry, to feel bad when some Haitians were being slaughtered on the coast of Florida. That's what it is. If you send a people back to sea on the condition where they were, that's genocide. But you see, you didn't feel anything because you weren't taught to realize that the Haitians are your brothers and sisters, because you don't know that the first Africans to be brought in slavery was not taken from Africa, but from Spain and carried to Haiti, then called Hispaniola, in 1506, under the aegis of the Pope of the...
Did you hear that? It was taken from Spain. Your African slave trade it's not African. It is a Salmon-Acer. It is a Sargon II move. It is a Tigler Pizzler the Third. It is taking you from one land and putting you in another land.
Send a people back to sea on the condition where they were, that's genocide. But you see, you didn't feel anything because you weren't taught to realize that the Haitians are your brothers and sisters, because you don't know that the first Africans to be brought in slavery was not taken from Africa, but from Spain and carried to Haiti, then called Hispaniola, in 1506.
Moors, Amorites that had been ruling in Europe were overthrown and sent as prisoners with Columbus as slaves. Not from Africa. Africa descent. They've been European for over 500, from 700 when they went and conquered Europe until they were overthrown by their slaves.
under the aegis of the Pope of the Roman Church and Bartolomé de las Casas. But how did you get in Spain? That was 1506. But you went into Spain, which was then called Iberia, Spain and Portugal and southern France, and conquered it yourself.
That's why they changed the name to Spain. They'll tell you this is the Iberian Peninsula, but they won't tell you this is Iberia that the Amorites, the Moors, the African Canaanites had conquered. How would that feel if you were being told in high school, once you conquered all of Europe? You were scary as fuck.
Las Casas. But how did you get in Spain? That was 1506. But you went into Spain, which was then called Iberia, Spain and Portugal and southern France, as conquerors yourself in 711.
7-Eleven on the corner of every nigga mart. This is to always remind you. 7-Eleven. Hey, play that number for me. 7-Eleven. Why? Because you're a fucking Amorite. That was your year. Till 1506. 7-Eleven to 1506. That's just under 800 years. You went in, kicked ass, and then ruled for like 400 years. And then, this is like a return serve, right? Like in tennis. You got your play on the ball, now it's their play on the ball.
Under the leadership of Tariq, for whom the rock of Gibraltar is now named Gibraltariq. Nothing in your education, because there's nothing in your textbooks about any of this. So you'll have to go to Spain. Luckily, at the University of Barcelona, where I attended for 2 years, there are these documents, and I had never known anything about them. I hadn't known that the Africans called Moors had ruled Spain from 711 until 1485. The last of them losing power at a place called Granada. I was always wondering why...
Granada. That's where it blew up. That's why we call things that go boom a grenade. Granada. 1485. So 711 to 1485. Alright, 711 to 1411 is 700 years. Right? Just under 800 years you ruled over them. You got more ruling time than they did.
That 90% of all the songs coming out of Spain was singing to La Morena, the black woman. So how come in this country 90% of all the songs, the records, the tapes, everything is La Morena this and La Morena?
So, the Amorite had the European worshiping the Amorite. Are you listening to this? Listen again.
I was always wondering why is it that 90% of all the songs coming out of Spain was singing to La Morena, the black woman. So how come in this country 90% of all the songs, the records, the tapes, everything is La Morena this and La Morena that? When I went there, I found out La Morena raised hell in Spain. Even the paper you write on shows your heritage and your history. It was in Egypt.
Let me say something. Men are king But these men taught the people to worship the queen. Their slaves worship the king. The queen, pushed the king aside. Now today we have a monarchy. Right? Monarchy. Matriarch. Mama rules instead of patriarch. This is African doing. This is what the Moors calls. Good or bad, it is what it is. This is why I will never let a Moor rule over me. I will not worship a vagina. Period. They worship the woman. They still do today, calling the woman God with their focus on the term Mother Nature. When you are defeated, your enemy captures the woman. The pirate takes the booty. Now look at the Black Queen. Her image has been stripped. Her jewelry plucked. And what will she do? She continues to say, I want to participate in the game. As a player, she's already lost. She will not hit the reset button. These women look at us like we're trash for looking at other women. For the most part, all men were eradicated. These women went to men from other nations, I would assume because there were no other men around. I don't blame them. I understand. But understand, I'm showing you the source of our problem. Where we get this mental perception of this queen image. Because the men taught the children to worship the queen. The men also taught the servants to worship the queen.
I was always wondering, why is it that 90% of all the songs coming out of Spain was singing to La Morena, the black woman? So how come in this country 90% of all the songs, the records, the tapes, everything is La Morena this and La Morena that? It is when I went there I found out La Morena raised hell in Spain. Even the paper you write on shows your heritage and your history. It was in Egypt, Ethiopia and Sudan that the first papyrus paper was created, not rice paper in China. Just as it was in Egypt that engineering, Sesostris II, you are engineers, many of you, Sesostris II, changed the flow of the Nile. That S-turn you see there was placed there by African engineers in 2250 BC. There was no Jesus yet. No Adam and Eve story yet. Because that came out of the Sanhedrin in 700 BC. Just yesterday. when the African engineers was changing the flow of the Nile. Hydrographic engineering, there was no Adam, no Eve yet. No Jehovah. Because Abraham, the first Jew that brought up the concept of a Jehovah, wasn't even born. The Africans had already worshipped Ptah, P-T-A-H. Amin-Ra. You still say Amin at the end of each prayer, and they told you it means so be it. That's a lie. Amin was the god of the north. When Scorpio, the pharaoh, headed the north and Egypt was divided into two groups, it had gone into a civil war. Mena, or Nama, was the king of the south, and his god was Ra. The conquest of Mena over Scorpion allowed Mena to join God Amen with God Ra and call Amen Ra. Thousands of years before there was a Jehovah, Jesus, or Allah. Muhammad ibn Abdullah wasn't born until 570 of the Christian era. Pontius and Pontius that started Christianity wasn't born until 50 AD, according to the story. And Abraham, who started the concept of a God named Jehovah, and Adam and Eve's story, wasn't born until 1760 BC. The Africans of Egypt and Ethiopia and Nubia were already in their 13th dynastic period. No different than the lie they told us that the Jews built the pyramids. Which one? The little one in their bathtub? There are 72 pyramids throughout Egypt. The first one was designed, engineered, and built by the multi-genius, first one known in the world, Imhotep.
Hey, wait, that's cool and all, whatever. But we built the city of Ramses. Alright? And in about 3 minutes, you're going to hear him say he's a Jew. So don't think he's denouncing any of it. He's just talking about chronological order.
That was the third dynasty. The last one was the sixth dynasty. And the first Jew wasn't born until the 13th dynasty. You can't build a pyramid before you're born. If you kill one European Jew in Ushkush, because he is Jewish, the whole white Jewish community getting on. But if you kill umpteen black, I am not supposed to say anything, otherwise I'm being raped. You see, they didn't tell you that they're black people who are Jews. So you say blacks and Jews are going to have a conference. Couldn't be blacks Jews too? Or you never heard of the Falashas, the Ethiopian Jews? I'm one. I know that I don't look Jewish, but they don't look Jewish to me either. They are called the Falashas, but you didn't hear anyone saying anything in America when the Italian fascists were exterminating the Falashas. Nobody said anything.
Now listen, a lot of people believe the Falashans are Jews. So this is actually the Italians. Italy is where the Pope sits, who is going to give them an order to go and do this. So this is an actual act of the Catholic Church under the Italian army's orders to exterminate Jews, biblical people, Indios, God's children.
And it was the forerunner to what Hitler was to come and do next. But there was no rallying cry about my people. We were 5 million when Hitler arrived. Mussolini arrived.
5 million when those, what? Italians arrived. 5 million. Living. See, this is why when we grew power under David, we always wore armor. This is why during the time of Maccabees, we always wore armor. Because any day, God's children could be sitting around having a cup of tea, and here comes death. And what does death do?
With the help of the Pope,
Mussolini.
Pius the 11th, I think it was. When the Italians left, we were 50,000. But no cry.
5 million. And when the wonderful Italians left, how many were they? 50,000? Wow.
Pius the 11th, I think it was. When the Italians left, we were 50,000.
50,000.
But no cry. Isn't it strange that when you write and when you are taught, you hear only about a Holocaust? One. What happened to your Holocaust that's still going on? What happened to the 50
See, people always sit there and say, why would God let that happen if that's God's people? Why wouldn't God let that happen? He told us all that the world has been given into the hands of the wicked. These people preach Christ and go to war every day. Christ, 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 Christian society, let's go fucking kill blacks. And other minorities. And take their resources. And we'll put them all into one little containment cell. USA.
Million Africans, your brothers and sisters, that were murdered in Munamatapa, now called South Africa, under Cecil John Rhodes.
Listen.
Do you know that black folks take scholarship in honor of John Rhodes, Cecil John Rhodes? Because you don't know. Nobody told you who the Rhodes was. Rhodes made Hitler look like a playboy. You don't know about the Holocaust.
Think about it. Howard University is to a white man's. It's a white man's name. It's an all black school and a white man's name. What did that white man do? Didn't he contribute to the genocide of black people? But just in one area, one section of the world. He didn't try for worldwide annihilation. No, he's a good guy. Let's go to schools in their honor. Who's the genius of Planned Parenthood? Margaret Sanger? How many people take scholarships in her name? How many people take fucking government handouts to go kill their future baby? That child is your fucking future. Oh, I don't have enough money to feed the child. You feed yourself.
With Frederick Lugard and Dr. Jameson in what is today called Nigeria, with Goldie and others, when they took over the colony. You don't know about the Holocaust with Leopold II, the Vanderbilts and the Pews and the others, the Rockefellers and so forth, when they took over what was called Manicongo in those days and changed it to the Congo Free State. How many millions? 22 million were exterminated. African women pregnant were...
This is what they do. These people were exterminated so they could set up white fucking populations in South Africa. It's like...
placed in the middle of roads.
Pregnant African women are placed in the middle of roads.
And 3 limbs put to both arms. And then cut with the horses and split them open and the babies fell out as punishment that the men would see it. These are records. They themselves wrote, not realizing that Africans would come later to revenge these causes. That isn't mentioned as Holocaust.
This is the reason that you were not allowed to read or write or be caught reading or writing in their language, because they knew if you saw the records of what they were doing to your people worldwide. This is not a fucking incident in Alabama. This is not just some incident that happened in some lower part of a giant fucking continent. This is global. It is the United States in league with European countries to go in and murder and steal resources on a constant. This has never stopped. They are going into places that cannot defend themselves against the technology of war. When they took you and me, we had spears, bows, and arrows. Show me the cannons we were shooting their ships with, and I'll show you the cannons they were shooting people with. We go to a museum, we see their war technology. We see a boat. We see the simplicity of a boat being able to cut through waves, and it's called a canoe, and we don't see that as technology. We see metal shaped to murder, and we call that technology.
In any of your textbooks, because it was only Africans being exterminated. I don't expect enemies to say this, but I do expect that.
I'll tell you what, you sat around and believed that you're African American, and then they're exterminating all Africans everywhere from your fucking perspective, and you've still done nothing. Tomorrow, you're gonna fucking still do nothing. You can't tell me fucking 100 black people decided to get up off their ass and start digging in books and fucking poured this information out, and they shared it with the black public, and the black public still did nothing. Well, this is too much fucking porn and rap. No, I got shit to do.
And 3 limbs put to both arms, and then cut with the horses and split them open, and the babies fell out as punishment that the men would see it. These are records.
Here they hang a male to show the rest. There they cut a woman open, they horse-drawn and quarter a pregnant woman to show the men. Well, obviously here we don't have any goddamn men.
They themselves wrote, not realizing that Africans would come later to revenge these causes. But that isn't mentioned as Holocaust in any of your textbooks, because it was only Africans being exterminated.
No, all of it's mentioned as fucking colonialism. It had to be done. Colonialism. Flat out fucking murder. Over and over. Well, we didn't kill them all, so it's not really genocide, right? Fucking murder. Then they preach, thou shalt not murder. Hey, fucking forgive. Forgive murder. Repetitive murder, forgive. Forgive. Your God says, an eye for an eye. But you've accepted their God. Let me tell you something. Since I've been making these fucking videos, nobody in my family's been hurt. Nobody's died, not even from old age.
I don't expect enemies to say this, but I do expect that when you write and when you do your research, that you use the appropriate term, genocide, Holocaust, wherever it applies. In Tasmania, an island of Australia, African was murdered. There isn't one left.
The Tasmanians today are not African blood. The Africans that were on the soil of Tasmania were obliterated. This is what white supremacy does.
And you don't call it a Holocaust. You don't cry about it. You don't get up any day complaining. Nobody comes to you and asks you, but you cry for everybody else's Holocaust. Because you weren't taught that these people had anything at all to do with you. You forget that the slave boat did not come from Africa to America. It came from Africa to the Caribbean, from the Caribbean to America. The first boat that brought Africans here was not from Africa, but from Barbados.
Did you fucking hear that? I've been preaching to you forever that you're not from Africa. You're from fucking islands! Islands in the fucking sea! They took Moors as slaves in Europe from ruling positions, got them off the European soil, went to Barbados, attacked the people there, enslaved them, and went to Virginia! The niggas that started in Virginia are fucking Barbadians! Caribbean Negroes! Fish out of fucking water!
And 3 limbs put to both arms. Then cut with the horses and split them open and the babies fell out as punishment that the men would see it. These are records. They themselves wrote, not realizing that Africans would come later to revenge these causes. But that isn't mentioned as Holocaust in any of your textbooks. Because it was only Africans being exterminated. I don't expect enemies to say this, but I do expect that when you write and when you do your research that you use the appropriate term, genocide, Holocaust, wherever it applies. In Tasmania, an island of Australia, every last African was murdered. There isn't one left. And you don't call it a Holocaust. You don't cry about it. You don't get up any day complaining. Nobody comes to you and asks you, but you cry for everybody else's Holocaust. Because you weren't taught that these people had anything at all to do with you. You forget that the slave boat did not come from Africa to America. It came from Africa to the Caribbean, from the Caribbean to America. The first boat that brought Africans here was not from Africa, but from Barbados. The first that came to Virginia in 1619 in Jamestown. So you weren't told that there's any connection. As a matter of fact, the people from Alabama don't feel anything for the people of New Jersey, and the people of New Jersey don't feel anything for the people of Mississippi, etc., etc.
You were force mixed by your slave masters, and the rest of us mixed for survival. The men that were able to be captured were forced under the women that had the men that died in war. They put the weak men with the strong women. Are you understanding what happened to us all?
At all to do with you. You forget that the slave boat did not come from Africa to America. It came from Africa to the Caribbean, from the Caribbean to America. The first boat that brought Africans here was not from Africa, but from Barbados. The first that came to Virginia in 1619 in Jamestown. So you weren't told that there's any connection. As a matter of fact, the people from Alabama don't feel anything for the people of New Jersey, and the people of New Jersey don't feel anything for the people of Mississippi, etc., etc. We have not been taught that way.
Now that's the big problem that's happening in society right now. This whole of the black consciousness is starting to crackle because there is an interconnection and we all do feel it. Now, with us awakening, what will we do? Will we continue with this separatist attitude, not wanting to be a whole amongst ourselves? Or we continue without a king act or a king be? We're men, we're not insects. Even though we think in that pattern, we've been forced to think in that pattern. If this pattern is still in our mind, then we should at least utilize it to a positive advantage. It states, I've come to the conclusion that imperialism and exploitation are forms of cannibalism. This is parasitic, human parasitic, and in fact are precisely those forms of cannibalism which are most diabolical or just flat out evil. That statement was made by Jack Forbes, it said in the bottom corner. Alright, it states, thus, in spiritual as well as secular context, the American and African peoples have interacted with each other in a variety of settings and situations. Listen, people, that's a biblical statement. This is exactly what is stated in Genesis 9. You know what? It fucks with me that we're in the end of days and it takes us right back to the beginning. It literally takes us back into Genesis. One of the final prophecies. No, Ham, you're not left out. Japhet's gonna dwell in the tents of Shem, and your children of Cain, they're gonna be servants to the servant. And this is what we're seeing here. Admixture for survival and forced reproduction. When they say you're Africans, to a degree they're right. They forced it onto you. They took males that were Moors, and they took whoever lived in Barbados at that time, who most likely were either Canaanites or non-Africans. And it states here, these interactions may well have begun in very ancient times. When we look at the Cambodian Negro that went for the pale Chinese woman that causes the loss of that civilization, it's exactly the same thing. very ancient times. Columbus was also aware that Africans may well have utilized ocean currents to his 1498 voyage, specifically used the southern route from the Cabo Verde Islands to Trinidad. An easy crossing traveled consistently thereafter by Spaniards, Portuguese, Britons, and others. Columbus was especially intrigued to see what lands lay in the South American direction, since the King of Portugal had said that there was terra firma in that direction, and was greatly inclined to make discoveries to the southwest. This is from a book called Africans and Native Americans, page 14 and 15. I mean, you crack open the book and it's just giving away real history, not plagiarized bullshit that wants you to believe that you're from Africa. In short, I gotta turn this music off for a minute. In short, Portuguese had found boats, they found canoes, which left from West Africa to navigate to the west with merchandise. He saw well-made, multicolored scarves or sashes, identical with those of Sierra Leone. Later, Columbus stated that each American wore scarves, which resembled Almazia's Moorish sashes. One of those, one for the head and one for the rest of the body. African and American Native Americans. Now, we all know that even though it's not publicly stated, the mound builders are credited to the Moor society. So anytime they start digging in those bones, they're going to say, oh, these are Moors. And this is why the Moors lay a great claim to the land of Ameri, or however they call it. Now, to me, that's fucking undisputed. Why? Because it says so in the Bible. It in fact says so in the book of Joshua, while Joshua is overthrowing those cities. Because God has ordered Joshua. Look, if the Israelites don't do this, they'll be destroyed. Alright, so let's go further. Let's turn that down a little bit. Alright, so it says, thus, Columbus wanted to verify the truth of what Americans of Haiti had stated previously. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Americans of Haiti. See, these are the Americas, and we all are Americans. See, there's foreigners that have invaded and taken us over that now call us Americans. They're doing the same thing that Joshua did. Or that's what they believe. Even though it's a completely different promise. They don't see themselves as the wicked that has been given this promise. This is why when they started this madness, they identified themselves with the 12 tribes. They call themselves Jacobites and shit like that, when they overthrew the people with the name Jacob. They call themselves Ephraim and Manasseh when they overthrew the people that held the title Ephraim and Manasseh. This is one thing that other nations don't do, that Japhet does do. When they take something, they take the name as well, which is odd and eerie. Again, this leads me to a movie that is it Matt Damon? Matt Damon plays in, and it's Mr. Ripple or something like that. It's about a guy that murders his friend and takes his identity. You know, and this is why the greatest white collar theft that hurts the public is identity theft. And people don't respect this because it's a quote unquote white collar crime, white privilege, white collar crime, white privilege. And more people are hurt by white collar crimes. Like millions of dollars are moved illegally through white collar crime per week. Now, here it states, thus Columbus wanted to verify the truth to what the Americans of Haiti had stated previously, to the effect black people had come from the south and southeast, and that their azangia, their spearheads, were made of guanum, a brass or bronze-like mixture of gold and silver and copper. This is on page 15. Pedro Marie D'Angelo obtained information at second-hand information, to the effect that in 1513, Vasco Nunez de Balboa met members of the tribe of Ethiopians in Panama. So, there's a tribe of Ethiopians in Panama, and this is where I call bullshit. Alright, now, unless he's meeting them and they're saying, hey, we're from fucking Ethiopia, blah, blah, blah. And this is why I always bring up Amos 9 and 7. Because this is very important. Now, Amos 9 and 7. Though are ye not as the children of Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel, saith the Lord. Now, here's the key to this. Now, yes, that statement says a lot. It says the Israelites look like Ethiopians. Now, listen. Have I not brought up Israel out of the land of Egypt? You're not going to find Israel in Egypt. You're not going to find Israel where you think you're going to find them. Now, I'm not a world traveler, so I don't know if every day I'm running Ethiopians. But I'm under the assumption when I see people, they are not Ethiopian, and they are not Ethiopian blood. So when this says that the children of Israel look like the Ethiopians, and then he states, I've moved these people. Have I not brought the Israelites out of Egypt, and the Philistines from Cathor, and the Syrians from Ker? So I'm under the impression the Ethiopians aren't talked about being moved. So I'm usually going to find Ethiopians relatively, it's safe to say, in Ethiopia. Because there has not been a diaspora dealing with Ethiopians. They've been able to hold on to their soil since the beginning. Now, if I see a tribe, that word fucks with me. Because I know of 12 tribes that I'm particularly akin to. And as this book attests, most of you viewing are too. See, because in the 1600s, we didn't have choice mingling. In the 1700s, we didn't quite have choice mingling. It's not until these modern times that we have, quote-unquote, choice mingling. Pick who you want to marry to a degree, because your options are wide. When they're in confinement for hundreds of years, 400 years confined, your choice of pickings are whoever your master has on the plantation to a degree. Now, that is a bold statement trying to narrow it, and there's tons of things that fall outside of that category. Alright, so keep that in mind. Alright, so again, we have a tribe of Ethiopians in Panama. Wink, wink. And this is why I believe the term House of Israel is brought up in the Bible as, in later chapters by the prophets when they are prophesying. I believe there are whole roots that have not been touched, that have stayed the same bloodline. But for those roots to present themselves, they could very well be extinguished by our enemies. Because it seems that's the kind of chess game we're playing. Or that we've been thrown into, or born into, based on blood. And when I say based on blood, I've watched a video recently where somebody claims that they met white people that were Israelites and things of that nature. And you've got to understand, white people can't be Israelites based on white supremacy. God promised his children to be slaves. You cannot have slaves under white supremacy. Versus the final prophecy. Now, if you want to push white Europeans were slaves to the Moors, you can push that all day long. Were white Europeans enslaved in Babylon? No. In Greece? No. In Rome? No. Were Hebrews in those countries? Yes, 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 and yes. In fact, we can open the book, I believe, Joshua, and we can learn about other nations that the Hebrews were enslaved in for degrees of years. 10 in some, 7 in others, and 20 in other places. All nations have put a fucking horse rind in our goddamn mouth. Enough. This is the generation it ends. It says, while crossing the peninsula, Balboa, get it? Rocky Balboa knocks out Apollo, right? It doesn't matter that it's the name Apollo. It matters that it's a black fighter, Balboa. While crossing the peninsula, right, with the tribe of Ethiopians, Balboa reached the native village of Kerueka on the Caribbean side of the summit of the mountain, and thus the Spaniards actually are said to have seen black slaves belonging to the Americans, but they learned that the slaves came from a totally black village located 2 days' journey away, and they conjectured that the black had come from Ethiopia at some earlier time. They couldn't talk to the goddamn slaves. They didn't know they were Ethiopians. They guessed they were Ethiopians. Amos 9 and 7. You look as the Ethiopians to hide your ass. Lopez de Gorma also reports that Nunez de Balboa reached Kuakura, whatever. He saw Negroes, right, that were as of Guinea. Is that Puapu Guinea, or is that New Guinea, or is that French Guinea? Are you seeing my fucking point, or is that Africa Guinea? They saw Negroes that were as of Guinea. That means the same thing that Amos 9. I made you look like the Ethiopians, and I made some other ones look like Guinea. Look how many fucking places on earth that have Negroes there are called Guinea this or Guinea that. Do you see a pattern? Does anybody see a pattern here? Check this out. A Jesuit also makes reference in 1554 to his judgment that some Ethiopians were living beyond the Amazon region. Didn't I bring this up fucking months ago? They changed the name to Amazon River. It was called Negro River. It was called Negro Land. Ethiopians didn't come from Ethiopia and start calling shit Negro Land. The Amazon River is a new name. This is on page 16. As soon as you crack open this damn book, I gotta get this book. You know how many years of preaching I do off this book alone? Ooh, shit. This book solidifies some thoughts and abolishes others. We're not separate at all. None of us. In November 1494, a German, Dr. Geronimo Muñoz, wrote a letter about his impressions of Lisbon, Portugal. He reported that there were many niggeri, many blacks. There was many niggers in Lisbon, and that the king of Portugal had sons of Ethiopian kings with him for educational purposes. Interestingly, on January in 1503, a sailor from Lisbon presented for sale in Valencia, Spain, 5 Negroes. One of them was Miguel, 20 years old, of Terra Nova. Anybody know where Terra Nova is? Isn't that in Canada? I'm asking. I'm not even gonna look it up. Somebody else look it up, find out what Terra Nova is, and then paste it. And then if you're gonna be one of those people, at least read the comments and make sure nobody else pasted it first. So when we don't have 5 Terra Nova comments. Alright. It says in 1505 was presented also a slave, Juan, 16 years old, of Terra Nova. Thus Miguel was born in 1483 and was taken from Newfoundland to Lisbon. Now Newfoundland is the area where the Dutch uprooted these people. This is where right, it's like below New York. It'd be the, I guess, New Jersey area. When we first started digging into this book, America being the latest description of the New World, the images of black Indians had Newfoundlander written below it. Newfoundlander of Newfoundland, and that is what got me to get that book. Okay, so seeing these names, these are the ancient names, or these are the before colonization, these are the names that were on the land. All right. Terra Nova is new. Nova is new and Terra is land. That's why it's Nova Hispaniola, is New Spain. You know, so Terra is Terra land. That's why they call us Terrians, right? Because we're land, we're of the land. You know, Newfoundland, Lisbon, where he was small, so probably before 1492. Juan was born in 1489 and was captured when small. So they came over here to the pre-New York area, not necessarily Manhattan or anything like that. This is the pre-New York area, and they captured this little boy, and they drug his ass off, right? And this cat didn't meet him till he was 16. Juan was born in 1489 when he was captured when small. So before 1499, alright, says they are among many slaves from Terra Nova sold in Lisbon, Seville, Spain, and Valenciennes after 1500. Alright? So they were coming over here. And how you gonna get a little boy? You'd have to separate that little boy from his parents in some kind of way or manner, maybe a sword or a pistol. So you'd have to kill the parents or be able to seize the parents as well. And then look at this kid, separated from his parents, sold as in slavery. You know, there's no telling if that's the picture of the kid. That says North American Indian of 1924. All right, we don't see Indians that dark anymore. It says La Casa points out, for Columbus, the lives of Americans were obviously nothing, and a continuous war. Well, you see the statement that was stated before about cannibalism? He's feeding off of these people. He's killing a lot to get a few and then going to fucking sell them. Slowly wiping out a village in two ways. One, he's doing a Shalom and Asser. He's picking up one and taking it to another place and destroying the root of that stock in the you know, it's like taking a couple pieces of corn and destroying the whole fucking field. You know, Columbus, La Casa points out, Columbus didn't see life of the God's people valuable. It was obvious Americans were nothing to him, and was the continuous war to obtain slaves were simply necessary to fill the ships. Stock. This is why they call stock exchange. Exchanging people from one area to another area. And then forcing them to live in those communities. Just more hands. Hey, when we watch those videos, Lloyd Pye, he explains that they would accept the children made by the Sasquatch looking beasts because they needed more hands in the village. Right? To obtain slaves were merely simply necessary to fill ships. Columbus wrote to monarchs that from Haiti it is possible in the name of the Holy Trinity. They're doing this in their Holy Trinity. Where is their Trinity in the Old Testament? There's not. Monotheism is the Old Testament. That's one God. Polytheism is in the New Testament. The God, the Son, Mother Mary. Oh, don't forget the Holy Spirit too. Oh, yeah. That's a pantheon. That goes beyond the triad. That's a pantheon. You don't understand your Greek worship because Romans didn't tell you right. You've got to read the Roman writing to understand what really happened. No fucking Christ existed. Their children that go off to war and murder us are fucking Christ for them. That's why they call them Cristobals, after Columbus. It is possible, in the name of the Trinity, the unholy Trinity, to send all the slaves which it is possible to sell. Because in Castile and Portugal and Aragon and Italy and Sicily and in the... You understand? They came over here to steal people, to take them back over to fucking, what, Europe, and sell them into slavery, and then fucking, what happens? They don't have the heart to treat them like they did in America, and the slaves start fucking everybody over there. And what Hitler do? Hitler's like, fuck this, let's send them all back. Do you get what happened? By the time Hitler comes around, he says, let's send the fucking niggas back, and let's kill off all the mixed breed. I'm not fucking with you. 3 videos ago, we covered the final solution. Hitler killed off mixed breeds. He sent the stock back. We have to move them back to the east. We have to get them far east. They pushed them to England. That's fucking west. He said push them east, they moved them fucking west. Where were the slave ships going? West. They took them back. And at that time, you will be brought back to Europe. At Hitler's time, you will be brought back. And the ones that couldn't be moved, they were slaughtered by the Italians. They were slaughtered by the Germans when the Germans went into Africa. Know your history because it repeats. Now we're in fucking one place for the most part. We're still spread, but for the most part, we're in one fucking place again. That's bad. We were dispersed for a reason. We went into these lands unholy. We changed their people. And their people became more wicked than they already were. Our later generations pushed them back into wickedness. It's a sick game. They were already wicked with all knowledge and all language barriers broken. They went off the deep end. We fell away from the Creator. We need to go. Portugal, Aragon, the Canaries, and the Canaries. They utilize many slaves, and I believe that those from Guinea are not now enough. We need more. Do you understand what happened? They got so greedy. They sent the Moors out of Europe and replaced them with Hebrews. And then they started fucking the Hebrews. And then they made a bunch of mixed babies. And then Hitler tried to kill all the mixed babies that were adults by then. So, the picture shows you, look at the picture in the background, see if I can find one without any images, without any words. Now, this is a North American Indian in 1924, before now, this is a modern American Indian child. Okay? Now, you can see it's just a switcheroo. This is what the term proxy means. Alright? It's like the Slim Fast commercial, right? Before she was fat, now she's thin. This is the same thing that they say about Israel in 1967. You left black and you came back white. The ancient Israelites were black. The modern Israelites, the Israeli, are white. Right? So you can see the very brown, very dark, very black with straight hair child in the background. And then you see the modern version. Let me try to get like a picture when it comes up. There's your before. And there's your after. Now that is not from sexual breeding, and we're not looking at one like it's one bloodline and this is a continuation of that bloodline. This is a completely different bloodline. This is a Tiglath-Pileser. They have been swapped out.
Why is it necessary for us to talk about the survival of our people? Many of us feel, many of our generation feel, that they're getting ready to commit genocide against us. Now, many people say that's a horrible thing to say.
Now, I find it interesting that that's been said in the 60s, that's been said in the 70s, that has been said in the 80s, that has been said in the 90s. You will always find a black speaker saying they are about to commit genocide against us. Here's the problem. When they said that in the 60s, they did not feel like it was happening. When we live in 2015 and we look back at the 60s, it seemed as if genocide was being committed. It is constantly happening. But we're wrapped up in it, and that's the problem. If we were sitting back in a different place, looking at it, this happened in America today, this happened in America today. If we had the accumulation of deaths come to our office, and we could see how many of us died this day and yesterday, without the numbers being changed, we would no longer say, it feels like it's going to happen soon. We would then know. By controlling the statistics, controlling the records, they know they're getting the job done. By controlling the statistics, by controlling the records, they know who's not doing their part. Hi, Albuquerque. Hi. This is Janet down at Numbers. And your nigger deaths are low this month. I want you to get them up, or we're going to visit you. If we controlled those records, if we controlled our system,
why is it necessary for us to talk about the survival of our people? Many of us feel, many of our generation feel, that they're getting ready to commit genocide against us. Now, many people say that's a horrible thing to say about anybody. But if it is a horrible thing to say, then we should do as Brother Malcolm says, we should examine history. The birth of this nation was conceived in the genocide of the red man. Genocide of the red man.
This is what happened, this is 1854. The American Indian chief of Seattle replies to an offer from the white government of the United States.
So in 1864, the Seattle chief replies to an offer from the United States.
This is what happened, this is 1854.
1854.
The American Indian chief of Seattle replies to an offer.
Now, who's got the territory of Seattle? Didn't we look up Chinook?
From the white government of the United States to buy, within quotation, to buy a large area of Indian land. How can you buy or sell the sky, the warmth of the land? The idea is strange to us. If you do not own the freshness of the air and the sparkle of the water, how can you buy them? You don't own them. Every part of this earth is sacred to my people. Every shining pine needle, every sandy shore, every mist in the dark woods, every humming insect is holy in the memory and experience of my people. This beautiful earth is the mother of the red man. We are part of the earth and it is part of us. The rivers are our brothers. We give the rivers the kindness we would give to any brother. But the white man does not understand our ways. He is a stranger who takes from the land whatever he needs. The earth is not his brother but his enemy, and when he has conquered it, he moves on.
Now, I must bring this up. I must always bring this up. We listen to this again. We listen to everything twice, right?
How can you buy or sell the
How can you buy or sell the sky?
Land? The idea is strange to us.
This is not a concept that anybody that with the title or the hidden title of Indian can truly accept. It is strange to us.
Freshness of the air and the sparkle of the water, how can you buy it?
How can you buy this stuff? You have no control over it.
Every part of this earth is sacred to my people. Every shining pine needle, every sandy shore, every mist in the dark woods, every humming insect is holy in the memory and experience of my people. This beautiful earth is the mother of the red man. We are part of the earth and it is part of us. The rivers are our brothers.
Now, this is something that you do not understand. You call yourself black now. You have gotten away from your red title. Arguing this black and white. How can you argue that you're Jacob if you're arguing that you're African?
We give the rivers the kindness we would give to any brother. But the white man does not understand our ways.
The white man. This does not talk about women. Women aren't going out setting this shit up.
He's a stranger who takes from the land whatever he
You
needs.
see that? He's a stranger. Period. What is a stranger? A foreigner. An alien. What is an alien? Something from somewhere else. In Genesis 6, what does it say? These things came up, murdered men, and impregnated women. Now they hide themselves amongst the white male population. Women cannot reproduce without male seed. This is the key. This is what all the greats keep saying over and over again throughout history. I'm not pushing the eradication of anything. All life is precious. I'm just stating.
The earth is not his brother but his enemy. And when he has...
He says, this Indios, this child of God says that the earth is the enemy of the seed bearer of the Caucasus.
sandy shore, every mist in the dark woods, every humming insect is holy in the memory and experience of my people. This beautiful earth is the mother of the red man. We are part of the earth and it is part of us. The rivers are our brothers. We give the rivers the kindness we would give to any brother.
give to any brother. Every African walks around here calling everything their brother. Nothing on this earth gives them that respect back. Nothing. Brown people walk around with kindness until it's been crushed. These are spiritual people who are being spiritually crushed. White men have allowed foreigners to dwell on the earth in the shape of them. These things have pushed white supremacy and the eradication of dark-skinned people, one city, one fucking town at a time. And in certain parts of history, it's take a whole fucking continent. Dear white people, if you're watching, imagine it being the other way around. When the black Moors enslaved some of you, you still got to live. Your enslavement to us eradicates us. Slowly but surely. Now you've gone to new levels with poisons. Oh wait, you've constantly been using poisons. So, understand what's being said here. In the Matrix, as White Agent Smith holds Black Morpheus, he says that humans are a virus. Well, no, see, Adam's red people were to care for the earth as if it was the garden. It seems throughout history that's kind of been going on. It seems that some people mingle with the Chinook, and then they're not allowed to grow food, so they need to constantly enslave Indios. Didn't the Europeans cut up India? It's a subcontinent, and they still couldn't fucking stay off.
The white man does not understand our ways. He is a stranger who takes from the land whatever he needs. The earth is not his brother but his enemy, and when he has conquered it, he moves on. He kidnaps the earth from his children, and he does not care. I do not know.
That is funny. He says that about the earth, and yet we're reading about Columbus kidnapping Indios, God's children, and then putting them into slavery in nations with commerce, with Christian kings. Only Christian kings are allowing this. Yes, Muslims have, slavery as well, but, whatever. I'm not in the middle of Muslim slavery.
They're different from your ways.
I'm in the middle of Christian slavery. Now, you see this image on the screen right now? I want you to understand, right now, Wish Ram Tribe, Chinook, 1911. These are the children of Cain. These are the children, Chinook, that are shepherds to beef because they can't grow. Now, it says, thus even as Columbus was loading 5 ships with slaves, he was proposing to sell 40,000 in various parts of the Mediterranean along the coast of Africa. So Columbus is loading ships, 5 ships, with you. He's telling you, white people are telling you you're from Africa, and in reality, Columbus is loading ships with slaves and trying to sell them in various parts of the Mediterranean Sea and along the coast of Africa. So, Columbus is selling slaves to what? The Moroccan Empire and Berbers and Moors? Moroccan Moors. And he's selling them in the Mediterranean to the Italians, To the Spanish, to the Portuguese, to the French. French are Mediterranean too. You see what's going on? You were told you were brought from fucking Africa, and in reality, they took you from here and settled you in parts of fucking Africa. And all over Europe. And then the Europeans just couldn't keep their hands off you. You were just too sexy. I'm too sexy for this slavery. So they started they started doing to you what they tried to do to Daniel. And you know how that happened. So Hitler was like, all this fucking must end. We must send them back. Return the merchandise. That's kind of funny. Hey, look. This is a sick situation. I'm making jokes so I can deal with it. So I don't go buy a fucking whatever and scream, feel my fucking rage. Because that's not going to solve anything. Then everything I know is just burned away. My father taught me fire too. And he taught me how to keep warm with it. Burning down, things just ain't worth it. Many thousands of Americans were shipped to Spain during Columbus' period of dominance and in the Caribbean. See, Columbus sailed around like he was a fucking god. Imagine the time that the Nephilim lived and they kicked a bunch of ass and they walked around with egos. This is the same thing that Columbus is doing. He's getting on fucking battleships and going and attacking people with homesteads. That'd be like me getting with 12 tanks, tank operators and all, and going into each city and just taking whatever the fuck I wanted. That's the same thing he's doing. You just don't see it that way. If I did that today, you'd call me a mass murderer. If I did that on the instructions of a pope, you'd call me an American hero. Do you understand how biased that shit is? How one-sided? Many thousands of Americans were shipped to Spain. Wait a second. This is why there's slave castles in Spain. You see what's going on? Europeans build slave castles where Europeans live. And then they bring Americans to these slave castles. That's what's really going on. You thought you were from Africa, but they really took you to Africa. During the period of dominance, during Columbus's dominance in the Caribbean, I've got cannons and rum and pussy everywhere. All these fucking men in my way. Fire up the cannon. I mean, how easy is that? You're fishing, you're hunting, you're eating dinner one day, and then all of a sudden a fucking cannon comes and bursts and fucking hot coals on you and your family? Whoever survives that is just put in chains and fucking taken to Europe. Could you imagine that day? You know, when that happened? You seen that happen to somebody else? You would think fucking God sent the fireball until you saw these men wearing some kind of shiny shit that you couldn't even see their heart beating through. You could barely see their flesh. You seen Spaniards wearing armor would look just like you seen astronauts from space today. They would think they were gods coming to destroy them. They would think that they were fucking sent from Armageddon. They would think their prophecies had come true, that the day of Armageddon had come. Imagine you're living in a time of look, sweet ass garments and shit, and then ironclad warriors come out of nowhere with weapons of destruction you've never seen. Imagine the first time you see a laser beam used on another human in real life, in our modern time. Imagine that feeling you're gonna feel when you see somebody fucking vaporized, turned to fucking dust. Imagine when you see it and it doesn't work right, and they run around on fucking fire until they die, and they're still on fucking fire. Imagine how you're gonna look at the person holding that device that just incinerated a person right in front of you. They're shooting cannonballs to a people that have never seen fucking cannonballs and gunfire. But everybody's seen fire. Imagine you're a native today. You know there's people that live aboriginal lives today. They don't even know what a computer is. Imagine you threw a fucking grenade at the edge of their camp. Do you think they'd run from you, or do you think they'd just fucking bow? You throw a grenade. It takes them fucking a day to cut down a tree. You throw a fucking grenade, it obliterates 12 trees and 4 of their tribe members. What do you think they're gonna do? The first time, maybe shock. Second time, they're probably gonna bow. Third, fourth time, they're getting their fucking weapons. These people attack natives constantly, natives with prophecies. Some knew what was going on, and that's why some bloodlines stayed whole. Some didn't know what was going on. Some thought it was the end of the world. It's difficult to calculate the exact number because many ships departed from Haiti without leaving any record of their cargo. But we may be sure that they did not leave empty. Oh, that's why it was low. I turned it down because of the music, I forgot. In any case, 3,000 Americans are known to have been shipped to Europe between 1493 and 1501, and likely being the total possible with the likely total being possibly double that. Most were sent to Seville area, where they seem to show up in the slave markets as Negroes without a place of origin being mentioned. Alright? So they were capturing us, taking us back to Europe, and then not keeping a record of it to say that they had no origin. Now, if this happens on a mass scale, then they're constantly able to make up shit. Oh, you're from this place, you're from that place. Oh, you're from Africa. Oh, your father's fucked up in a tribe and the tribe's chief sold you to me. They can make up anything. Anything at all. If these people that weren't with Columbus didn't keep records, we would know of none of this. We would think we were nothing but Africans that just ate coconuts all the time. And we were more. So, again, they showed you the dark-skinned Chinook Indian, then they show you the yellow coyote called Dutchie in the background. Columbus reached Lisbon in early March of 1493. Many people came to see the captive Americans, and it is very likely that some of the latter were taken 9 leagues into the interior to see the King of Portugal. There, it was that two Americans drew maps which showed the La Cuyos, the Bahamas, Cuba, Haiti, and other islands. So they didn't understand what all was here until these Indians drew for the king the ascending islands that are out there. If you check out let us find the truth, he makes a video saying show you the way, and when you see this, it shows how all the islands are connected in kind of a road down there. You know, if the seawater dropped, you know, there would be a road. You know, so basically, the islands of the of what is it? Is it Atlantic? The Atlantic would have been drawn at that point. It may be also that Columbus left some Americans with the Portuguese, as discussed earlier. All right, so we're gonna go. Got a little bit more to go. Tovado stated that the 16th century perpetrated the greatest genocide in American history. In 1500, the world population was approximately 400 million, of whom 80 million inhabited the Americas. Hey, listen, if the world was at 400 million and 80 million inhabited the Americas, then there was way too much fucking going on in the old world. And that means 80 minus 400 million, okay? That means over there in Europe, over there in Asia, and over there in Africa, their estimated counts. See, they say approximately, but in 1500 they couldn't do an approximate count. So their estimated count was 400 million worldwide, right? Excuse me. Let me restate this. The 16th century perpetrated the greatest genocide in human history. In 1500, the world population. Okay, so yes, it is saying the world population. They're claiming it's a 400 million. All right. So they're saying that over there in the old world, they had 320 million people by their count. I really doubt that they were able to count the people in Africa. I highly doubt they were able to count the people in Asia. The world wasn't united under evil like it is now. Again, 80 million inhabited the Americas. By the middle of the 16th century, there only remained 10. Alright? So, if you put these in percentages, they left 7% of us alive. 80 million wiped down to 10 million. So somebody with a calculator, what is 10% of 80? What is 10% of 80? And that's the number of us left alive. If they're taking us as slaves over to Europe, they're counting us as population. If they murder us, then they're not counting that as a living being. So think about it. They killed off 70 million of us to be able to take our land and enslave the remaining 10 million. That's what's being written. That's what the approximate count of this author based on the estimations. When you go back, it states who they got the estimations from. 36. Trovador. Todorov. So that's Comanche in 1891. Man, it's hard to go back 1 second. Now look, we're going to read this. We're going to read this, but this is the Comanche men in 1891. Now you can see how Asiatic this guy looks, right? And you see how regular Indian this guy looks, right? Those are the Comanche. Now watch. And we're going to read this and then remember that picture. If the word genocide has ever been applied to a situation with some accuracy, this here is the case. But the tens of millions of Americans who disappeared after 1492 did not die in the Holocaust inflicted within the Americas. Many thousands were sent to Europe and Africa, where their descendants still live. Now, do you understand what's going on? A lot of people were having a problem with history not matching what the Bible says. Well, the problem is history is not being told correctly. You didn't fucking be brought here from Africa. They enslaved Africans that overthrew them. See, Europeans weren't born into slavery. They were overthrown by their enemies who they were warring with, the Saracens. They were warring with the Moors for thousands of years, and the Moors finally won. I'm sorry, the Arabs. And yes, the Moors classified as an Arab. And there are many nationalities of Arab. So the whites were always warring with the Arabs. And the Arabs defeated them. Now, there are white Arabs. That's the funny thing. The palest Arabs are at the top of white supremacy. They're whiter than white people. And that's the fucking funny thing. Their supremacy should have been built based on a non-Arab supremacy based on who they were warring with, except for there's a whole Bible and prophecy and everything, so, you know. If the word genocide has ever been applied to a situation with some accuracy, this here is the case. But the tens of millions of Americans who disappeared after 1492 did not all die in the Holocaust inflicted within the Americas. Many thousands were sent to Europe and Africa, where their descendants still live to this day. If you're over there in Europe and you're watching me and you look like me, that's because you were taken and I wasn't. If you're over there in Europe and you look like Tupac Shakur, it's because Tupac's family wasn't taken and your family was. You understand that pattern? I don't have to keep saying it and making up people to visualize yourself as, right? Here it says a portrait of a Native American man from Prince William Sound, present-day Alaska, a voyage of discovery to the North Pacific Ocean. George Vancouver, 1799. Now, my hair grows like that. See, I believe most of us shape our hair into these cotton bald looking froze. But that's how our hair is, like a dry jerry curl. Because most of you used to live by the ocean, so you swam a lot. You didn't put oil in your fucking hair. You see all these portraits and paintings of the Aboriginal, the Indios people by the water? What is that, Zebulon, Haven by the Sea, or the coast shall be for Judah? Whatever you want to. Look how golden that baby looks. Portrait of a Native American man from Prince William Sound, present day Alaska. Voyage discovery is the same thing, but there's different writing underneath. I can't tell if that's English or French. I think it's English. Man and woman of the Ittajamawees, the Fox Indians, Wisconsin, John Carver, 1781. Now, there's a lot of Indian pictures that show brown skin and black skin Indians by John Carver. So that's also a name to look up. Alright. Now you've seen all these Indians fully clothed, and you've seen what they look like during a time of war. Now they took all the war pictures and told you, these people are nothing but savages. Alright? These people are making these clothes. These aren't European shits. They told you when they came here you were dressed in overcoats and vests. And you wore sandals. Then war started and you got down to fighting gear. Now this is the ceremony of 1579 of Sir Francis Drake being crowned with the headdress by California Indians. Now, you can see a king that they will not name crowning William Drake as king. And you can see over here all the Europeans with all those guns. And you see over here all these Indians. Right? Here the Indian warriors are. Now, the Indian warriors aren't down here. You see them holding spears back there, just like you see the troops holding guns. Alright? So, you can see the troops are closer to protect William. The women seem to be okay with this. The men don't seem to be okay with this. Now, we understand from history why the men are not okay with this. Now, in the background, if you look, you'll see this. I don't know, this is some kind of English sign. You can see there's an X on there as if they're putting up somebody's royal shield. See the boat in the background. And this is the Queen Khalifa of California. And you can see her hair is braided into ropes. You can see her Negro features. It says, narrated in the book of Adventures of Esplandian, a book written in the 1500s by the Spanish, Queen Khalifa was a regal Moorish black woman, courteous, so they say she's a Moorish. They do not say she's a Moor. This is the same thing when they say Jewish. Alright? Now, if Khalifa has writings, or Khalifa's people have writings, and they say that they are Moors, that's different. But if the Europeans are coming over here and stamping things based on what they look like when they know they were just ruled by Moors, then that's a misclassification. If they know they are ruled by Moors, they hate Moors. If they come over here and see a bunch of people that look like Moors, When they go to Europe, and when you go to Europe and you go to Italy, people of Italy look different from the people of Spain, yet they are related, but distantly. They both have Mediterranean blood. You consider them European. The European title covers all of the different types of Europe. The Moorish black woman, that covers the different types of black woman when you use that term. In fact, it's an oxymoron because you put Moorish and black in the same sentence. There's no such thing as a white Moor. A Moor is a bloodline. Is the bloodline of the Amorites. You see what I'm saying? Alright. She's courageous, strong of limb, and large in person, full in the bosom of her womanhood, and the most beautiful of a long line of queens who ruled over the mythical realm of California. So, now, you and me understand that California is fucking real. Now, historically, these people have always heard about California, and they considered it mythical. They've always heard about God's people. They consider it mythical. You understand, most of the people that came over here to do war with ye did not know that you were God's people. It was not until the writers who had read previous books came over and started classifying you and said, oh shit, we think these are the lost 10 tribes here in North America. They didn't say that about people in Barbados. They didn't say that about the Negroes in Cuba. This is why I always promote anybody saying that they're Judah here should really reconsider. Virginia might be an exception, but I'm just saying. That's based on study, not just conjecture. Now, they tell you Khalifa was a myth. They tell you California was a mythical realm. Again, we know this is real from history, from our own history. So, now you have to ask, how many myths existed that they usually stamp a white face that are actually real and actually Negro exploits or Hebrew exploits or Canaanite exploits? She commanded a fleet of ships with which she ruled and maintained peace in the surrounding lands and the islands, including Baja and Hawaii. She reportedly kept an aerial defense force of griffins and other fabulous animals which were native to California, trained to defend the land against invaders. Now, when we look at New York, this is where we see most griffins and gargoyles. When we look at LA, we're not familiar with the griffin being associated with the lands of California. But it seems in ancient writings it was. So, when we see the pirate movies, Pirate of the Caribbean, and they push the Calypso and the power of Calypso, calling her a witch and things of this nature, now we see where they extract the character from. Now we see why in the movie she is not exactly friends with the people that need her. Just based on the character, you know. She was so powerful she could project her imperial power overseas of the Mediterranean at will. The Esplanadian narrates that Khalifa maintained cultural and trading contracts with the Moors of Africa, and told of her wars in the Mediterranean Sea and in Anatolia, the Byzantine Empire, and in southern Europe. Now, if you want to read about Khalifa, then it is your job to look into the Byzantine and Mediterranean history and a history of the Moors. This woman was a myth because they couldn't reach her land. She had secrets of the current that they couldn't understand. That would rhyme. I'm badass. Anyway. Know ye that at the right hand of the Indies there is an island called California, very close to that part of the terrestrial paradise. See, did you just hear that? The terrestrial paradise. They knew this was the promised land, all of the Americas. Know ye that at the right hand of the Indies there is an island called California, very close to that part of the terrestrial paradise, which was inhabited by black women without a single man among them, and they lived in the manner of Amazons. They were robust of body, with strong, passionate hearts, and great virtue. The island itself is one of the wildest in the world on account of the bold and craggy rocks. Putman Ruth, 1917. Herbert Ingham Presley edited. California, the name, Berkeley, University of California. Okay, so this is very interesting because, you know, this is written in 1917. Now, I don't know if this is a collection of books. We'd have to get this book to then go into what's accredited for the content, and then find those books that that book's based off of. You know, so you know, if this is your thing, says slavery was quite common in the Mediterranean world in the 13th and 14th centuries. In the Iberia, Islamic laws recognized slavery, and Muslims were even allowed to hold other Muslims as slaves if the latter were black or Loro of intermediate color. Oh, in between. Loro. In Christian Barcelona, one finds numerous slaves between 1275 and 1288, classified as Moro Lorum. So, Loro, see Moro Loro, see Loro Lore right there. So it's a Moro Loro. It's like a childlike, like, oh my God. It's, you know how words evolve, right? Instead of saying black, since they had so many slaves, they didn't want to call them black in front of them because they'd probably insult them. So they called them moral or Muslim of intermediate color. Saraceo, blacko, white Saracen. Whoa, blanco is white. So they have white Saracens or white Muslims. Alright? Saracium nigrum is a black Saracen. Saracen lorum is Saracen of intermediate. And the Saracen albino is white Saracens. Oh, so Ricio Blanco is a white man that's a Saracen, and a Saricium albino, albin. You know what an albino is? The pale dude come from black families. So that was their caste system, okay? Caste system based off color. In the 13th century, Barcelona had many Tartars, Greeks, Bulgarians, Bosnians, Albanians, and so on as slaves, including an esclava blanca Tartara, white Tartar slaves. In the 14th century, Muslim slave became more common again, and one finds many white Laurel, intermediate, and black slaves. Turkish and Tartar slaves were also present along with many Russians, Bulgarians, Sards, probably Sardos or Sardinians, and others called Abiguas, Zarqueses, Saracens, and so on, probably from the Caucasus Mountains. Saracens. Whoa, Circassians. Circassians, whatever. In the 15th century, Berber and black Senegalese Wolof slaves became common, especially after 1440 to 1450. In 1452, Pope Nicholas V permitted the Portuguese to enslave infidels, pagans, and enemies of Christ. Alright? So that's enemies of the church. By 1479, the Portuguese were dominant insofar as black slaves were concentrated, insofar as black slaves are concerned, but Canero and Muslim slaves continued to be obtained by Spanish directly. By 1455, the Portuguese began to dominate the black African trade by successfully reaching Algidar and then Senegal in the mid-15th century. Senegal.
Anthropologically.
Now we're going to stop there. We have reached the 1 hour mark in this video. Told you we're doing 25 to that. So, as you can see, the history books that educate your children, my children, all parents don't talk about any of this. They're not told that they've been subjugated, marginalized, taken into slavery. All their property has been taken from them for the promotion of the European race. Other nations of the world that have been read off, that have been dealing with slavery of themselves as well, do not see the bigger picture. If per se all black people are wiped out, next in line
is the people that are still not white. Obviously, the people here in America hold the Mexicans next in line. So, again, a lot of things I've said has been validated by what's been said in this book, African and Native American. A lot of the information in the book comes out of Cortez's letters to kings, and a lot of the crew that went and sailed with him. We will not find our history in the schools of our enemies that are teaching our children to be nothing. We live in this society, and the greatest of our people amount to nothing. We spend a month talking about our history and about great inventors and people that have made something for this society, and something about that spoils our hearts that we don't give a fuck. You believe that we do not have anything to believe in. You desire not to look forward. We have great things to believe in, and they are just ahead. There's a ridge over there, and they are beyond that ridge. We have to prepare ourselves. You believed in Jesus, and even that guy said, have your candles filled, have your lanterns filled, have your lantern oil. You are not prepared to go out and live in the wilderness. You must prepare yourself. Out there you will be mentally broken. You have been spoiled in these societies. If you're not willing to leave this, nothing's going to change. There's no point in me saying what I always say: when they hang you, they'll hang me. It's coming. We're already in the middle of it. We just haven't been chosen yet. You understand that? I hope so. Remember, you've been dominated based on your birth. Something that you cannot control. You can control if you're going to participate. That's what you can control. Understand participation. Understand what your participation means. And understand what side of this war you fall on. There is none in the middle. If you're not pure white, they'll eventually wipe you out. I don't set these rules. I don't set these terms. I view what has happened historically, and I make opinional comments based on what I've seen. If anyone has any problems with what has been stated in these videos, feel free to leave a comment. If you'd like to sit down and discuss these, feel free to write a letter. Good luck to you, no matter who's staring back at you in that mirror. All of us were born, and we all make choices. We can't all win. Good day.